This is an I Am Listening original podcast.
What we need to do is to, as we've said, we've got to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We've got to scrap the Human Rights Act because that has led to lefty judges being able to stop a sensible detention and deportation policy, being able to protect our borders. The whole point of being an independent nation, particularly if you're an island, is that actually you can decide who enters your country and who you say thanks but no thanks.
Welcome to the Kent Politics Podcast.
In this week's episode, we hear how Thanet Council is looking to spend $6.1 million on something called a green campus. Medway Council cracked on with its plans for local government reorganisation, much to the upset of the opposition Tories. And there are some interesting developments regarding the potential return of Channel Tunnel services here in Kent. I'm Simon Finlay, the local democracy reporter covering Kent County Council, and I'm joined by Dan Essen, who reports on borough and district councils.
Hello.
And Robert Boddy, who covers Medway Council.
Hello.
And our special guest today is none other than MP Richard Tice, one of the leading figures in Reform UK. First up, Dan, what have you been looking at?
So I've been burying my head in a planning application by Thanet District Council. We're looking to use about 6.1 million quid from the Levelling Up Fund to build what they're calling a green campus at the Port of Ramsgate.
Yeah, what does that mean then?
So in theory, it's meant to be an eco-friendly facility that hosts training facilities and workspaces for both new and established businesses, and they say they want it to serve as an incubator for local enterprise. However, when I last covered this late last year, the council had received no expressions of interest from the private sector in taking over and operating the building, and that was only days before the deadline for those expressions of interest was coming. Nonetheless, the planning application for all three of these eco-friendly buildings has gone in, but they also say that the council's only going to build the first two of them, and the third will probably be built when some kind of third party can be found to help the council in doing so.
So have they got no use at all planned for these buildings?
Well, council spokespeople say that there is a plan, but they can't reveal it yet. Later in the year, they tell me the council is going to decide on an operating model for the campus, and we'll find out then what they're actually going to be put to use for.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Robert, what's been happening down in Medway?
Well, last week I talked about how Medway Council was considering pushing ahead at its own cost with its plan for local government reorganisation. This week, they made the decision that they would do so. However, the Conservative opposition are not letting them do it as easily as Labour might hope. At the meeting on September 23rd, the Tories used the public questions section at the meeting to ask 13 questions which clearly criticised not just the plan, but the way the administration had gone about it. They claimed the version of 4 unitaries would cause problems for Kent Police and asked how health organisations, schools and businesses had been consulted on the plans. This, on top of saying the costs, which, as we mentioned last time, had already been budgeted for, of putting forward this bid was a waste of money, as it wasn't one of the 2 shortlisted options. They even called it a, quote, vanity project. Council leader Vince Maple denied it was, and other cabinet members said discussions had been had with the organisations mentioned, but until the proposals were actually produced, there was nothing much to consult them on.
Okay, besides these questions, what can they actually do though?
Well, before the meeting was even over, the Tories had published a letter they had written to the council leader saying they were calling in the decision, basically taking it to the Business Support and Digital Overview and Scrutiny Committee where more questions can be asked. If I was cynical, I'd say this likely won't do anything more than slightly delay things, as Labour hold a majority on the committee and, presuming they support their own party's plan, can just approve the decision and it goes ahead, albeit after some difficult questions to answer. Councillor Maple said at the meeting the council was pursuing its own option because, as LGR is the biggest change to local government in 50 years, it was important to get it right.
So, Simon, what's been happening down your way?
Well, there's some interesting developments in the attempts to get the international train service through the Channel Tunnel stopping in Kent again. People might recall that those services were suspended by Eurostar in 2020 during the pandemic and have not been reinstated since. Eurostar has not ruled out bringing back Ashford International into the picture again, but just not at the moment. But now moves seem to be afoot that the campaign might be getting a bit of a nudge. Last week, we reported how a group of Labour MPs had delivered a letter to Fiona Gillan, the Chief Executive of the Office of Rail and Road in London, and set out the benefits of competition to Eurostar. Now, they claim this could boost the Kent economy by £2.7 billion over 5 years and attract 500,000 extra visitors to the area and to provide extra employment to hospitality, retail and other transport sectors.
How would this work?
Well, the MPs are asking the ORR for other operators to be given access to the Temple Mills International Depot in Leighton, East London. This is important because this is the only place in the entire sort of area that services the Channel Tunnel where trains could be serviced and maintained. So that's quite important. And the other important thing is that the ORR is due to decide if other train operators will be allowed access to that site in the future. So the MPs involved were Jim Dixon, Helena Dollymore, who's Hastings and Rye, Sojan Joseph, Polly Billington, Tony Vaughan, and Rochester and Stroud's Lauren Edwards. Now, Kent County Council is also going to help by staging its own event to highlight why Kent is a great place to come to for visitors. But I can't say much more about that event because it's currently under embargo, but more of that later. But what I can't say for sure what is going on, but there seems to be, with all this stuff bubbling under, that there's a bit of a concerted effort going on to try and get Kent back in the picture again. So perhaps some delicate negotiations are going on in the background, but we'll have to wait and see.
Is there a topic that you would like to be discussed on the Kent Politics podcast? Perhaps you've got a question for one of our panel, or you'd like to comment on a hot topic in local or national government. Get in touch by emailing or sending a voice note to kentpoliticspodcast@thekmgroup.co.uk.
Reform UK has been on quite a journey since the general election last year. With more than 14% of the vote and only 5 MPs, Reform UK now seems to be steering the national conversation, despite in theory being a minor party. Their deputy leader and MP for Boston and Skegness, Richard Tice, joins us now. Hello, Richard.
A very good morning.
And how are you?
Tremendous. Good form, thank you.
Why do you think that Reform UK has suddenly become so popular in the last year? Is it the Farage effect, or is it just because everybody in the country seems to be so hacked off?
I think it's because we're at Reform, brilliantly led by Nigel, are talking about the real issues that matter to people. We're talking about concerns over illegal immigration, concerns over too high numbers of legal immigration, too many people coming into the UK and not working, not contributing, not speaking the language. We're talking about the high energy bills, the lunacy of net stupid zero. People are waking up to how we've been completely misled by the two main parties on both of these critical issues. We were told that large-scale immigration would make us better off. Well, it hasn't. It's actually suppressed wages. And we were told that net zero would bring bills down. It hasn't. Bills have soared and everybody is poorer as a result. So we have the courage to tell it as it is. And we're just beginning. We're just warming up.
Yeah, immigration is obviously one of Reform's big issues. And here in Kent, we're at the front line of it because of the small boats. And they usually arrive at Dover when they come in. If Reform forms the next government, and the polling seems to suggest that it might, what will Dover look like in the days and weeks after that?
What will Dover look like? Well, what we need to do is to, as we've said, we've got to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We've got to scrap the Human Rights Act because that has led to lefty judges being able to stop a sensible detention and deportation policy, being able to protect our borders. The whole point of being an independent nation, particularly if you're an island, is that actually you can decide who enters your country and who you say thanks but no thanks. And so we'll get legislation drafted and ready, and we need to be absolutely robust on this. The British people are sick and tired of people breaking into our country illegally, demanding housing, demanding money, demanding better food, better Wi-Fi, better access to healthcare than British citizens get who pay our taxes, better access to dentists. This is simply not fair. It's not how we do things. It's not the British way. And people are furious. And that's before you mention the illegal working, the involvement in criminality that is regrettably going on, sometimes leading to heinous crimes.
Okay. Well, Nigel Farage has talked recently about sort of mass deportations. I mean, do you really think that will happen in the time frame that he's mentioned?
Well, if we can stop the lefty lawyers, as I say, by leaving the ECHR and by scrapping the Human Rights Act, then yes, we've got every chance. Is it easy? No, we're not pretending it is. But do the British people want someone to sort this out? Absolutely. And we're the people to do that. We're the most determined. We've got the most courage. And we have got a track record of achieving things. As you touched on at the beginning of this interview, no one thought we could go from 14% to averaging, I think, 31%, leading over 100 national polls. Everyone thought that would be impossible. Well, we've achieved it. And as far as we're concerned, we're just warming up.
Yeah. Reform polled, I think, 14.7% of the general election and got 5 seats. The Lib Dems got 12.6 and got 72 seats, which seems a trifle unfair. And your party's always said that it's in support of proportional representation. But given the polling which says you might actually form the next government, have you changed your mind on PR?
No, we haven't. We've always felt that PR is the best way forwards. And so we haven't changed our mind on that. But equally, we deal with the hand of cards you're dealt. And we're dealt with an electoral system, first past the post. We've had a referendum on it some years ago. That's what we've got to deal with. So our ambition is to win under first past the post.
Your leader has been on the record very recently, more than once. I've heard him say it myself. Is that your members should be getting themselves ready for an early general election? Is that about just to keep the members on their toes, or is there any basis for believing that Labour might go to the country early?
I think it's just the fact that the country's got major problems, in particular significant financial problems. And I think we, like many, question whether this government can hold it together through until the end of this parliamentary term. So I think those who support us and want us to form the next government would not forgive us if we're not ready, if there was an early election in, for example, late 2027. And so it's quite right to get prepared.
Do you think that the economy is likely to tank long before 2029?
I think that there's a reasonable prospect, as is there a reasonable prospect of being a bad financial drama in this parliamentary term.
Yeah, I mean, you've been criticised that all the things you've announced about immigration and policing or whatever. What would reform do differently? And, how can the country possibly afford it? They can't afford all the things they're trying to do now. How can they afford to do what you want to do?
Because we're the only party that will actually take an axe to the vast amount of wasteful spending that's going on across the public sector. We're seeing it in councils. We're starting to get to grips with it. I've identified huge savings in the local government pension scheme, where we're being ripped off on overcharging of fees, underperformance to the tune of billions of pounds a year. We can do the same in the national level. The quantity of quangos, completely unaccountable, unelected, wasting tens of billions of pounds. And we've got to say to people, as we have said earlier this week, we're going to scrap the indefinite leave to remain system, which is leading to huge abuse by people who are coming to this country and they're not contributing, they're not working, and they're taking benefits. And that's simply unfair. And we're talking about tens of billions of pounds of abuse here. And we've just got to tell it as it is. And I know that might worry some people. Don't be worried. We're fair, we're decent, but the British people should not have our taxes abused by people coming here with no intention to contribute to our economy.
There are 18 parliamentary seats in Kent. Currently, the Labour Party's got the majority of them, but the polling seems to indicate that bar two, Reform could in fact take 16 of them, including some pretty high-profile scalps like Laura Trott, for example, at Sevenoaks. I mean, the polling seems to suggest that she would be vulnerable. I mean, realistically, how many of those seats in Kent do you think Reform could pick up in 2029 or before?
Oh, the more the merrier. And we've just got to keep working hard and come up with policies that people believe that we can get done. And that's what we're doing. I think that we can make people better off by cutting out government waste. We can help businesses by cutting the vast amount of daft regulations. We want smart regulations that keep us safe, but we don't need daft regulations. And there are simple ones that just A, drive everybody bonkers, and B, actually hinder progress as opposed to help. For example, GDPR. I wonder whether any of your listeners actually like it. But that's a major block on better, faster healthcare. It's a major block, for example, on just being able to apply common sense, sometimes to access your own personal information or the information held in a health facility of your own children under the age of 18. This is insane, and we've just got to call it out as it is. So if we cut wasteful spending, cut daft regulation, then we can afford, we'll get some growth going, then we can afford what I call performance-related tax cuts.
Okay. Reform took Kent County Council in May by an absolute landslide. Given the state of top-tier authorities, you must have wished that you hadn't won it.
No, I think it's a great opportunity for us to get stuck in and to show, in a sense, to show at the council level that we can start saving money and we can start equally at the same time, we can deliver better services. And those two things are completely possible. And so, for example, just today, we've announced that Kent County Council has repaid early £50 million of long-term debt.
Yeah, I've just come back from County Hall, actually, and watched this.
Yeah, so look, this is a really significant announcement. It means that we can save almost £700,000 of interest every year. This is reform at work. This is reform performing for the great residents of Kent, a county that I know very, very well. And I think it's fantastic news.
Yeah, I don't expect you to be across the actual minutiae of the detail of that. And I understand why Reform decided to pay it back, but they did it by taking £44.5 million out of reserves. I mean, surely you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul, aren't you?
No, far from it. Why should you unnecessarily pay a whole load of bank interest? And you're improving your balance sheet, and it's called better financial management, better cash management, and that is a sensible thing to do.
Well, I mean,
what to do in business.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But, it was also the case that the deputy leader of the council didn't actually know what the original loan was for when I asked him.
Well, it depends when the original loan was taken out. Not in a sense. That's not the point. What matters is, where are we now? Where are we going? And where can we save some money? And if our councillors have worked out this is the right thing to do, then I think that shows within just a matter of months from being elected that we're rolling our sleeves up and the team are getting stuck in. Brilliant.
Yeah. The KCC leader, Lyndon Kemcaran, has decided to submit a separate proposal for Kent's future under the local government reorganisation, different to the ones that have been agreed by other councils here. She thinks that one kind of super authority would work with 3 assemblies underneath it. What do you think of the local government plans?
Yes, the reorganisation. Look, I think it's horses for courses, and I think it is different in different counties depending on a whole bunch of factors. And some of these counties are geographically very, very big. And so Lyndon and her team, they'll have looked at it, and what may work in Kent may not be suitable in somewhere like Lincolnshire, where I'm a member of Parliament.
Yeah. And
look, it's actually quite healthy that different people look at it, put forward proposals to the government, who then decide. That's sort of how we do things in the democracy.
Okay. Listen, I know you got to go, Richard, so thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks a lot.
No
Cheers.
problem. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Reform is back in the news again this week with his pledges to cut welfare and halt the flow of cheap labour. A few weeks ago, Nigel Farage said he would deport any illegal immigrant arriving here. He makes it sound really, really easy. Dan, can Reform really pull off what successive governments have managed to fail to do?
It's not impossible. It would be surprising because I'm sure we've said it on here many times and everyone will be used to hearing it, governments are in point of fact in control of who comes in and out of their country. The question is, what laws are there which constrain their abilities to do so? Reform are pretty open that they believe things like the Human Rights Act and the European Convention on Human Rights are what constrain Britain's ability to deport people, remove people from this country, which true, that's the basis on which most deportation sort of objections are fought, human rights grounds and so on. So if they manage to successfully pull us out of, the jurisdiction of the European Court in Strasbourg, remove the Human Rights Act from British law, and they're actually able to muster the material needed to do it, hire loads of people to process the claims, find physical ways of getting people out of the country. There's no reason why they couldn't do it. The question is, will when they have their hand firmly on the lever of the state and they start pulling, will anything actually respond? And at this point, the state is pretty hollowed out, and there's so many sort of agencies in between the government and actually affecting the policy it wants to. It's perfectly possible, but it'd be very surprising if they achieve it.
Yeah, it does seem that they could get through all those obstructions sort of in terms of where people can make their claims to, because that seems to be the thing. As soon as a decision goes against one or other party about something or other, the first thing they do is run to the lawyers who take it to court and just slow the thing up for weeks, months, sometimes years on end. Rob, you take a slightly more sceptical view of this, don't you?
The thing about it is I'm a little bit wary that I think it's possibly pushing the immigration topic almost too far for the vast majority of voters. Revoking indefinite leave to remain for a vast majority of people, I think there are certain people who any policy that makes immigration or says that it will reduce immigration is popular regardless. Like mass deportations, there are a certain group of people who say that's a fantastic idea and they will always think that. But for the kind of people, Reform can't always go. There are not always more voters to the right. They do need to attract some people from the Tories, from Labour, from the Lib Dems, if they really want to win everywhere. And so I think a policy like this is possibly straying too far away from those kinds of voters, which they do need to win. And I think it may be a slight misstep. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this road back slightly, because certain people are it's going to be unpalatable in the sense of, they will know maybe it's a colleague or it's a family member who are now questioning, well, under these rules, would this mean I would have to leave the country?
Well, exactly. And there's 4 years pretty much until the next election. So that's 4 years in which they have got to start explaining themselves how this is going to actually work in practice. It's all very well grabbing headlines, but somewhere down the line they've got to explain it. And if it's going to be part of the manifesto for a new government, it's got to be a sort of possible legislation in the future. So it's got to manifest, it's got to hold up.
I might add that also the Labour government might just do their work for them, because the government is currently consulting on changes to indefinite leave to remain, which would make it so that you become eligible for it after 10 years rather than 5 years. And it's been implicitly understood that the reason for this is basically because the single biggest short-term wave of immigration in this country was basically under the Boris Johnson government immediately after Brexit and COVID. Several million people came to the country from 2019 to 2024, and loads of those people will become eligible for ILR this year pretty much. And that will, nobody could deny that potentially creates a massive expense for the state, and the Labour government is aware of that, and as a result they're reforming laws for it. So it might be that if reform needs a row back on this, they might, if the Labour government does what they plan to and increase the ILR limit to 10 years, they might just be able to drop the policy, and then several million of the biggest, most recent wave of immigration, which is frankly very unpopular, won't be eligible for ILR, and it will create more breathing room for any future government to reform immigration law without coming up against the very unpalatable prospect of telling people who have been told you can live here, you can settle here, and then saying, actually, no, you can't get out.
Doesn't reform have another problem in as much as it's popular today, but in 4 years' time, could something else be more pressing, more unpopular?
I mean, possible, yeah, but I certainly don't think immigration as an issue and all of the technicalities surrounding it, like indefinite leave to remain, are going to stop being an issue, especially when a lot of people, there's a big thing with chain migration, people bringing older family and dependents, that kind of thing. Those are people who, very soon, within the term of this parliament, the state is going to end up spending an awful lot of money having to support on care and all that kind of thing. And I think it will remain prescient. So I don't, it might not be the very thing on people's mind if there's, God forbid, a massive economic crisis or something. But I don't think it's just going to disappear off the agenda by 2029.
I have a slightly different view in the sense of, I think, particularly with like the small boats, that's a very visible picture that a lot of people think about, and it angers people about immigration. If in 4 years' time, things like that, the very visible elements of immigration that people dislike are off the scene, if they do somehow manage to get the small boats crisis under control, if the headline numbers of how many people are coming into this country illegally, claiming asylum, how many people are sitting in hotels, these sorts of things, if they can reduce that, I think it will take a lot of the sting out of this issue. I'm not saying that immigration won't be a topic of conversation at the next election, but if Labour are successful in doing that, I think that could go a long way to fending off any attacks from Reform on this topic.
Okay, that's your lot this week. Thanks to Dan and Robert for their contributions and to your special guest. Don't forget to keep an eye on Kent Online for the latest politics coverage. You can sign up for our politics briefing newsletter by visiting kentonline.co.uk/newsletters. And don't miss KMTV's politics show every Friday at 5 p.m. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Kent Politics Podcast. Don't forget to check out stories throughout the week on the politics page of Kent Online. And you can watch the Kent Politics Show on KMTV every Friday at 5 p.m. or on demand at kmtv.co.uk.
This has been an I Am Listening original podcast. For more information, head over to our website, im-listening.co.uk.